Who touched my clothes?
Thou seest the multitude thronging thee, and sayest thou who touched me?
Master, I have suffered an issue of blood for 12 years. And I knew if I could just touch thy clothes, that I would be whole.
Daughter, thy faith hath made thee whole. Go in peace, and be whole of thy plague.
Hello, I'm Ruthie Morrow. I'm a family nurse practitioner. I get the privilege of having conversations with our patients about what's going on, with their health. And it brings so much joy and increased quality to my life, because to be used by the Lord to impact others is just, there's no greater joy than to be used by the Lord. I have so many stories of patients that have impacted me. Isolating just one or two is hard, because every time I volunteer at the clinic, something happens. The Lord speaks to me through a patient, and it's just a really wonderful way that I get to, minister to patients, and they likewise give it back to me in full.
I'm Dick Manthe. Chaplain at Living Water Clinic, assigned to the clinic by Lake of the Woods Church. I guess I've always I've got into chaplaincy because I always had a passion for working with people who are in need of spiritual care. It's a critical time in their lives, and we need to have somebody there that can provide them the care that they need.
My name is John Howe, and for 4 years, not quite 4 years, I've had the privilege and pleasure of being the senior pastor of the Lake of the Woods Church. When I was interviewing for that position a little over 4 years ago, there was much discussion of the possibility of opening this clinic. And there was a good deal of division, both within the congregation and even on the board of elders. And some of the people who I talked with said that they thought the decision as to whether the clinic should go forward or not really should wait until the new senior pastor was in place. We ought to find out what he thinks about it. And I didn't say anything at the time, but my inward thought was, I sure hope they don't wait till then, because I don't want to have to be the one who casts the deciding vote. I will offend somebody no matter what I say. 4 years later, I am tremendously glad that they had the boldness, the courage, the faithfulness to go ahead. This clinic is already a tremendous vehicle of blessing to the whole community. My son-in-law has been one of the physicians there. My daughter has worked a little bit at the clinic, and so many of our parishioners are deeply involved. So yes, I'm very grateful for the other support from other churches and other parts of our community, but this is the baby of the Lake of the Woods Church, and I want to do everything I can to continue to strengthen and expand that ministry. It's a blessing.
Hi, I'm Debbie McGinnis, the Executive Director here at Living Water Community Clinic. So many people have touched me. I can recall a patient that actually just came up and hugged me after we were talking to her, and it just took me by surprise, and how grateful she was to be here. That touched me. The volunteers that come in here, and they come from very busy daytime jobs. They're providers that, you know, almost on a run come in and take care of our neighbors. That touches me.
Well, when I first moved back home, I was not in a great place physically and definitely emotionally and spiritually, but I didn't really quite realize how bad it was. I went to, I knew that I was suffering physically, but I had no idea the points that I had reached. So my mom actually just took me for a checkup, and she took me to a woman named Margot Bragg, who volunteers here, and she said, well, we got to get some blood work done. And I said, well, I don't have a job yet, and I've just moved home, and I don't really know what's going on. And she said, well, you should come to Living Waters, and I can see you over there, and we can start to take a look at everything that's going on with you. And I said, oh, okay, great. And it was a comfortable place for me because I hadn't been to the doctor in 20 years. So, and I also had no idea if, you know, I just thought, well, I probably need to go on a good diet and, you know, stop harming myself, and living a pretty reckless lifestyle where I didn't put anything good into my body. I just figured that's all it was. So we did some basic stuff, and Margot sent me to a place to have my blood drawn, and Living Waters Clinic called 2 days later, and I woke up because my mom came into the guest room where I was staying, living with them, and she said, you have to get up right now, we have to go to the emergency room. And I said, what are you talking about? And she was like, Living Waters just called and said, you need to go to the emergency room. And I said, well, what did they say? And she said that they're going to explain everything when we get there and not to worry. And they said, well, Living Waters Clinic called us and said that your blood levels are dangerously low. So that turned into a 6-day stay at the hospital, where I found out that I was suffering from alcoholic cirrhosis, and that I think I had 4 blood transfusions, an iron transfusion. I had the first doctor who was looking at all of my tests and everything literally told me that if I had stayed in Chicago and I hadn't gone to Living Waters when I did, that I probably would have died in my sleep.
You know, I had one night that I worked where I had 5 or 6 patients all cried halfway through the visit, and you know, I would ask them what is wrong, and they would tell me that they just had sudden relief that the long chronic healthcare illnesses that they had been struggling with their whole life because they couldn't afford to manage it was finally being met, and someone cared enough to manage their diabetes and their hypertension and their cholesterol, their chronic pain, and everything that just has gone, you know, undiagnosed and ignored because they just didn't have the means and ability to manage it. So that having patients during visits just get that overwhelming peace always, you know, touches me, because it just reminds me of how impactful this clinic is for our patients and, you know, for the Lord's kingdom.
All right, I'm Amy Asher, and I'm probably one of the newer volunteers at the clinic. I've only been here about 6 months, one of the newer nurses. And I got involved here, believe it or not, through a Facebook post that popped up in my Facebook feed. And at that time in my life, I'd been asking the Lord for opportunities to use my nursing background. Again, I left the bedside about 6 years ago, with some off and on work in between. But I'd really been longing to use these giftings that I feel like the Lord had given me. And this popped up, and I jumped on it and was so excited to get involved. And you know, I come in here each night praying to be a blessing to each patient that comes in here, but in turn I honestly feel like every time I leave with a filled heart. These patients come in here sometimes in the toughest season of their lives, whether it's a job loss or whether it's just making ends meet for their family, and they come here weighted and heavy, but they're so grateful, and they're so grateful for the care, whether it be the medical care or the pastoral care that they receive when they come in, and it just ministers to me on the other end, seeing their heart of gratefulness. And it just reminds me when I leave each night just to be grateful for everything that I have and that I've been given. And it's just another time that I can tell the Lord, thank you. Thank you for giving me this opportunity. Thank you for giving me a desire to want to serve, but then to, again, for Him to use me to be a vessel for Him. A little bit of a personal side, my twin sister passed away about 3 years ago this month. And right after she passed away, within the month after, my nephew broke his finger. And we had seen the signs for living water on Route 20 before. And so my mom and I thought, oh, maybe we could get him into the clinic. I didn't know if they took adolescents, but we called, and there happened to be an orthopedic provider on that night. And he immediately said, bring him in. And so the clinic was used so mightily just for my own family on a personal level, that when the opportunity came up to serve years later, I felt like it was almost a the Lord giving me I feel like I've been able to be kind of on both sides of the clinic in a way, and I've kind of seen it go for full circle. And if I can be just a small part of what the clinic's been for me, I'm blessed and I'm thankful.
The volunteers that can't wait to get in here at clinic night and take care of the desk and welcome our patients and follow up with the patients and make sure they're taken care of. There's a lot of people that touch me. The security folks that are sitting here and taking care and keeping their eye out, and our chaplains and counselors, they all touch me.
Whenever we come in contact with Jesus, our lives are transformed. We just heard the testimonies and stories of individuals whose lives were changed. They were transformed for the better. They were transformed because of the work that the Lord Jesus Christ is doing through Living Water Community Clinic. We also heard from medical professionals and volunteers and chaplains whose hearts were touched by the patients or those who came in for spiritual care. I want to leave you with a question that Jesus asked. Who touched me? In the stories that you heard and the testimonies, who touched your heart? And then I want to ask you, how are you going to respond to that touch?